Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project. And I have the most fascinating and wonderful, incredible young lady with me today. Her name is Christina Wenman. She is a speaker, author, host of the Learning from Your World podcast, who is dedicated to helping people build connection, courage, and curiosity in their lives and workplaces. She wrote and published her first book titled Success Through Your Eyes at the tender young age of 17, a book which captures diverse perspectives on the meaning of success. Christina is also an expert in helping others step out of their comfort zone, making courageous decisions while leading by example. When she began training in a martial art called Brazilian Jiu Jitsu in 2022, and then actually competing a few years later. And we'll find out how she did in that competition. Christina, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I mean, we had such a great conversation when you were on my show. Such a great conversation that it ended up in the two parts, obviously. So I'm super happy to be able to continue that on your show.
And I am so excited to have you to return the favor and have you on my show. And actually, this is probably, I think, our third conversation because our first one was just, hey, what do you do? What are you all about? And, we were off and running from there. So it's been an incredible collaboration. And I'm just so excited to talk to you. So, once again, every time I read those words or say those words, she wrote a book at 17. And it's not like you wrote a book about, silly stuff or whatever. I mean, this is pretty deep. You were interviewing people to get their perspective on what their perspective was on success and what defines success. So tell us how that whole process even began.
Yeah, so it's funny. I don't even think I really read a full book until like a couple years before I actually wrote one because I always thought that I hated reading. I always thought that I didn't like learning. And what I realized, I think I just didn't like school and control specifically. Because, obviously you go to school, they tell you, hey, you have to read Grapes of Wrath or whatever. That's a book,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
I don't even know because I didn't read any of them. Um, but I didn't like having somebody else tell me what to do. And I also wasn't a big fan of fiction books.
Hmm.
And it wasn't until I started realizing that I could learn on my own that I was literally in love with learning. Not literally, but like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so, I started getting into psychology books and business books. I was like, this is really cool. Like, I'm just learning new things. Nobody's telling me that I have to do this. And I would say that's when I really started my love for learning and the passion around just finding this information. I love talking about the things that I learned too. So that really transformed into just a curiosity. Like, the more that you learn, the more that you realize that you don't know, and it
Hmm.
creates that more curiosity. So it's almost like this reinforcing cycle that's really cool.
Hmm.
So it sounds like, after saying that, like, why would she be credible enough to write her own book? And I remember being in the car with my mom and sister, and I was like, how old do you actually have to be to write a book? And they were like, well, you don't have to be any age to write a book. Like you can write a book now. And I think especially now in our world today with self-publishing, it's
Hmm.
super easy to be able to do that because you don't need to have an audience, you don't need to like have all of this background to be able to get into a publishing company. So it's really
Right.
accessible. It just takes a lot of work.
Hmm.
And I was like, well, I want to do that. And I didn't necessarily want to write a book just because I wanted to write a book, but I was getting really curious, going back to that curiosity,
Hmm.
about like all these people around me are telling me I want to do this when I grow up. I want to be that when I grow up. And I knew some of those people who were maybe in those positions of like a doctor, a lawyer, and they didn't really seem happy. And
Hmm.
when you see somebody who doesn't seem happy, I mean, granted, it might not be because of their profession, it kind of makes you wonder, well, is that really the life that I want to have?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think just having those conversations, especially in high school when everybody's trying to figure out what college they want to go to, what job they want to have, it just kind of is like, like let's stop and think, why are we choosing the things that we want to do, the professions that we want to do, the schools that we want to go to? And I very distinctly remember some conversations I had. One of them was with a friend who I was asking him, I was like, hey, like, what do you want to, where do you think you're going to go to school?
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, oh, I'm probably going to go to UW-Madison, which is, I mean, a really nice school. And he's like, I'm going to study either business or nursing. I want to become a doctor or business, which are two like not opposing things, but just like, why? And he was like, oh, like, I think that's what my parents want me to do. And also, it just seems like it's a good profession. I was like, well, first of
Mm-hmm.
all, what does a quote unquote good profession mean? I'm just like always asking why. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
where those conversations, how they got to where they are. And I was like, well, what would you really want to do? Like, if anything, like, if everything paid you the same amount. He's like, and then he went on this whole tangent about how cool it would be to be a history teacher. He was like, oh, I think it'd be so cool to be able to. And I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, why are you trying to study to become a business person or whatever? I mean, whatever a business person means, even, or a doctor. And he's like, it's just not as quote unquote good of a professional. I was like, what in the world?
Jeez.
So I was just really, and not in like a judgmental way of like, well, get a load of this guy, but like in very much like why? And do you really want to spend the most valuable asset you have, your time and energy? I guess that's two assets, your time and energy
Mm-hmm.
in doing something that isn't bringing you joy. And when you're not
Mm-hmm.
bringing, when it's something that's not bringing you joy, that's going to reflect onto all the people that you impact. You're not going to have
Mm-hmm.
nearly as much, of a personal impact, but then also on the people who you are around in the world, whatever. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so that's
Especially
kind
if
of
you're
how,
trying to treat people and you're a physician
yeah. Oh
and you
gosh.
don't
Yeah.
love what you're doing. I mean,
You wake up every
red
morning. I
flag.
hate
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and it's sad because I started to realize those with those more of those conversations, how many people really do think that way. And it's
Wow.
not through any fault of their own. It's really society kind of putting
Mm-hmm.
this pressure on us. So I never felt like, oh, you shouldn't do this or you shouldn't do that. But it just kind of made me really sad, but also very curious about,
Mm-hmm.
what's going on. So that's when I got the urge to say, let's go figure out these answers from the people
Mm-hmm.
who have reached this quote unquote conventionally successful definition, conventionally, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, let's go and ask these people who have achieved the things what they think success really means.
Mm-hmm.
So I had some informal conversations. I really highlighted a lot of my formal conversations in the book, but I just wanted to be able to get the perspective of
Mm-hmm.
these individuals, but still through the lens of a 17-year-old. It was really important for me to write it at that age that I did, perfect or not, definitely not. Um, but just to be able to say, okay, well, I get like there's a lot of people out there who write books who have achieved so many things who then go on to say, hey, this is how you become successful. But I was like, first of all, let's question what even is success in the first place. And second of all, we need to start having more of these conversations when we're younger. And I felt like having that perspective coming from somebody who was younger at the time,
Mm-hmm.
like that's something that, I could never write that book with that same perspective, with that same voice now. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's only, I'm 24 now, I was 16 when I started writing the book and 17 when I published it. But even if I wrote it now, it would be a different voice and a different book. So
Mm-hmm.
essentially, even though I was never like, oh, I always wanted to write a book when I was never like that. I was never a writer per se, but I was really passionate about getting the answers, which really was actually just getting more of the questions that we
Mm-hmm.
needed to ask ourselves
Mm-hmm.
and be able to bring that to other people my age. Because, I was never an expert in success. And that's why I always feel a little bit uncomfortable when people, ask me what my book was about, because just because I wrote a book about it doesn't mean that I know everything about it. Um, but yeah, so just think it's, if anything, it kind of feels like I know less about it because I realize how much there is to kind of dive into.
Hmm.
And with a topic that's so subjective, you never get the answer. You
Hmm.
get either I guess you could get an answer that's very dynamic that changes every day. But I think more so you get more questions.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, then I converted that into the book and then shared it with some different schools and I think a lot of high schools and even colleges, really anybody at any age.
Wow.
Always good to have those questions of
Hmm.
what is success and ask them for yourself.
So I have a few things. First of all, I love the fact that you had that epiphany that you could learn on your own. I mean, who knew? And talk about conventional wisdom. This is kind of like the complete opposite because how could anybody learn anything unless they're sitting in a stuffy schoolroom with, a bunch of other kids who don't want to be there either and you're all learning the same thing when each and every single one of you are different, have different interests, have different hopes and dreams and skills and desires. I mean, I hated school with a passion, which is really bizarre because I ended up getting a master's degree eventually. But I liked learning when I was able to decide what it was. When I started taking classes that were like more biology, physiology, anatomy, and that type of thing, it was like, where's this stuff been? My whole life because that was interesting. But when you have to sit there and just look outside going, I would so much rather be out there than sitting in here listening to all of this stuff. The other thing I wanted to ask you is when you were interviewing people for the book, were there surprises when you were getting from some of the responses that you were getting? Just the one where the guy was thinking, oh, yeah, either a doctor or a business person, but he really wanted to be a history teacher. Were there a lot more surprises like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think so. I did have, I know I mentioned this before, I had the informal interviews, like that person who I had asked, like a lot of people my age were more
Mm-hmm.
informal, and then I had some informal with the quote unquote successful people. And it's funny because as much as I did learn a lot that I put in the book
Mm-hmm.
and shared,
Mm-hmm.
I think I learned so much more from the actual process itself. And there's a certain type of knowledge. I don't know if it's even knowledge. There's a certain type of wisdom or expertise that you can only get through experience.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what was so valuable for me. Like, for example, I have always had the belief, consciously, verbally, whatever you want to call it, that everybody's infallible. Nobody is higher or less than anybody else, right? I
Mm-hmm.
always knew that, like, everybody has equal inherent value. But I think subconsciously, I still put people on a pedestal. I
Mm-hmm.
still saw that, I was sitting down. I was so nervous because I was talking to this person who I had looked up to because I saw their TED talk, or this
Mm-hmm.
person who I looked up to because, oh, like they're a CEO. They must know so much more than me. Like they must think less of me. Or, whoever I was interviewing, I think I still subconsciously put them on a pedestal, even though I consciously told myself, no, they're just a human.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I gained a lot of surprising experience slash wisdom in that. It feels weird to call it wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think I gained a lot like that. And and I guess I did communicate it in the book, but again, that's not experience that can be transferred and have the same value to the person who's reading it as opposed to the person who's having, which that's the whole experience of life. And I love that. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
one of those things that I think was really surprising was just really embodying the fact that they are fallible. So like for example, I was interviewing somebody and they had somebody who I was very nervous to interview,
Mm-hmm.
and he had like spilled oatmeal on himself as we were talking. And I was like, whoa, that's crazy. Like he just made a mistake. And it was just like that experience of being able to see him spill oatmeal on himself. There was another person who they got up and like knocked over their chair,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like an accident. And they didn't seem embarrassed by it, which I think
Mm-hmm.
tells you a lot too. But it was just that kind of experiencing the fact that these are just people.
People.
And through the process of writing my book, that was a big one where, yes, before I wrote my book, I was always like, yeah, everybody's equally valuable. But after I really finally subconsciously internalized that everybody is on the same playing field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was another, because you were asking about surprising things, that there was another one that I was thinking about when that thing came to light. If it comes back to me, I'll let you know.
Just, yeah, let me know. But I have got to applaud you just for your level of confidence as a 17-year-old or 16, because you were starting it then, right? And interviewing these people who are grown-ups, a lot of them, right? They were
Hmm.
oh, I'm going to use the S word, successful people. To be able to have that kind of poise, to be able to sit there and talk to adults, who have been through so much and, all this life experience and everything. And here you are, you're a teenager. How did you find the courage to be able to do that?
I think because my curiosity was so strong, I think it's two things. One of them was the curiosity was way stronger than the fear,
Mm-hmm.
which is critical, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
whether you're talking about curiosity or like in other cases when you're doing things that scare you, it's like the love or desire or whatever it is has to be stronger than the level of discomfort like
Mm-hmm.
that you're willing to face. So I think that was a big one. I was very curious and I was like, I want to figure this out. I also had a lot of momentum. Like once I made the decision, I just kept taking the little steps of like, hey, this is what I need to do next. This is what I need to do next. I think if I had like a pause in that, it would be hard because I would have time to overthink.
Mm-hmm.
And even now to this day, I think one of my biggest things that I sometimes struggle with is overthinking of like, oh, like, is this the right move? Is this not? And that is something that had I had that in that moment, it
Mm-hmm.
would have squashed everything.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say that for sure, but that's kind of one thing that I think is really important to recognize. The other aspect of it too is I don't know if it was even competence. I wonder if it was naivety that gave like, do you know the Dunning-Kruger effect?
No, I don't think I do.
So it's basically like if you picture an axis of like an XY axis of
Mm-hmm.
competence and confidence, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times beginners, people who don't know anything about it, have way too much confidence relative to the level of competence they have because it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like they don't know what they don't know.
Right.
And I think that's what I had was writing a book can't be that hard. Like, what does it really have to? And every step that I got into it, I was like, wait, this is actually a little bit more work than I thought. Um, so I think that I don't know if I would call it naivety or just being a beginner and not really
Mm-hmm.
thinking too much, because I think that would have created a lot of those overthinking problems. But then again, with the Dunning-Kruger effect, the more that you get into something, the more complexities you realize, the more that you realize that you don't know. And a lot of times that's why beginners are very confident, even if they don't have, think about like we're talking about martial arts, right? Like a lot of white belts might have a lot of confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then as you get into it, you're like, wait, and then you think about all the black belts who say, I still feel like a white belt because they
Right.
know how much they don't know. So I think naivety and momentum and curiosity were
Mm-hmm.
the things that really allowed me to do it, even though it was just uncomfortable and even though it
Mm-hmm.
was a challenge and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
work.
I probably already know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Did you have either a coach or a mentor or someone who was helping you along the way? I mean, I know at some point you had to have an editor, but even at the very beginning, did you have somebody who was kind of trying to coach you or hold your hand, or were you just flying solo?
So it's funny you say that because I actually kept it a secret for the whole time
Oh.
I was writing it, aside from the people who had to know. So the people I interviewed, even the informal interviews, like the super informal ones that were just more discussions, I didn't even tell the person that I was gonna write a book about what they were saying.
Mm-hmm.
I was just naturally like having those conversations already, so they wouldn't have known. They wouldn't have been
Mm-hmm.
suspicious, like, are you writing a book about this? So it did come very naturally to those people. But I told the people who I formally interviewed and I told my immediate family.
Mhm.
So people in my family were super supportive. My parents were obviously super supportive, just being like, "Hey, like, how are things going? Like, if you need anything to like any help that way."
Mhm.
But I didn't really have anybody who was like, this is your next step. This is your next step. Aside from the people kind of following up, checking in on how things were going. And everybody who did know was still super supportive throughout the whole process. So in a way, everybody was kind of a mentor who knew about it,
Mhm. Mhm.
but nobody was like let's go through this together kind of thing.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, not even my friends, like my best friends didn't know. They knew that I eventually, as it got toward the end, I called it my secret stuff, which sounds so suspicious. I don't know why I called that at the time. But they were like, "Oh, when's your secret stuff gonna be done?" Because they did see me working on my computer a lot,
Mhm.
and they were kind of like, "What's going on?" And I wasn't trying to be mysterious, but I didn't want to go out and tell everybody, "Hey guys, I'm writing a book." Like I just didn't want to. I didn't want to do that. And yeah, so eventually I told my friends about, a month or so before it was published when I already
Mhm.
had it all done and everything. But like I said, everybody was super supportive, but it's funny that you asked that now because I always forget about that little piece of it.
So let's go back to surprises then. Were people surprised when it was like, oh my gosh, here's the book? There's nothing like being an author for the first time and you get your first printed copy of your book. I mean, what was that like for you when you held that book in your hands and realized that, yeah, I did this?
Honestly, it's funny because I think a lot of people, that seems like it would be, and maybe for you it was like this, that seems like it would be the most exciting, relief giving, like, you know, great feeling in the world. But I think that was the hardest part for me
Really?
and I don't know if it was because I didn't tell anybody that I had written the book yet,
Uh-huh.
but I think seeing it, having it all done, having it published, my mind was like, shoot, now I need to tell everybody about this. Like, I was not looking for because when you write a book, even though it wasn't about my emotions, it wasn't about like my story of,
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff. I didn't realize how vulnerable it is just to share your
Yes.
thoughts.
Yeah.
Even not even like personal experience. Like I know in your book, obviously you really dive into personal experience. Like
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't imagine the emotional vulnerability and strength and courage it takes to do that. And obviously
Mm-hmm.
with that comes a lot of powerful stories and you're able to have a really great impact with that.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not realize how hard it was going to be to show up to school the next day after
Mm-hmm.
I still remember sitting at my kitchen counter, like making the Facebook post because it was a month before I published it. So I still wanted people to know about it.
Uh-huh.
But I was like, I got the books. I sat down, I think I was with my parents. We unboxed it and I was like, I need to tell people about it. And so I made the Facebook post. I wonder if I still have that somewhere. Um, and I was so scared to go to school the next day. And everybody was so supportive when I ended up going to school,
Mm-hmm.
but it was just like this thing that I created in my mind that was like, oh, people are gonna have to read it now. People, what if people don't like it?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it's just funny because that was honestly writing the book. Like hard work, in my opinion, isn't hard work. I think
Mm-hmm.
discomfort is hard work. Like a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times you visualize somebody, you know, oh, you gotta like slave away hard work. Like you think of somebody just spending a lot of hours on something,
Mm-hmm.
which is still work.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the hardest work is the emotional work that you have to do, overcoming the things
Yep.
that make you feel uncomfortable. And that
Mm-hmm.
was why that was the hardest part of my book, even though I didn't even have to do anything besides
Mm-hmm.
press post on the Facebook thing. That was the hardest part.
Yeah, but you're still putting yourself out there, and even with my first book, which has a little bit of personal stories in it, but nothing like the second one, and it was just when I got my first copy, it was just like, oh my God, I mean, it was just surreal, and I'm like, I really did this, and especially since I'm on the cover. That was kind of creepy. But the second one, and I was excited, I was proud, and a lot of people, like, friends and family bought it. Had a great book party or book release party, which was really nice and very expensive. But then the second one, oh my God. I mean, I think I told you in our conversation on your show that once it was published, I had 3 really bad weeks of writer's remorse, and I just hid under the covers for 3 weeks going, "Oh my God, what have I done? What have I done? What have I done?" Because you can't get the genie back in the bottle. And it's like everybody's going to know, some of my deep, dark secrets. And then I comforted myself by saying, "You know what, Cheryl, it's okay because nobody who knows you is going to buy the book or read the book. So, as strangers, it's perfectly fine." And I convinced myself of that. And crawled out from under the covers and went to the dojo the next day, and there on Sensei's desk was a copy of the book.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I know that it's crazy because I want to say I know that feeling, but again, I didn't even put like I know the emotional pieces and stories that you put into your book. Like
Right.
I want to say I relate, but like I know that that probably was so hard sharing so much of your
Mm-hmm.
personal journey.
Mm-hmm.
And but I do know what you mean about, when you see other people, there's something about
Mm-hmm.
just physically seeing other people have the book or
Yeah.
say like it's weird because it's like, wait, this should be what I want, but also
Yes.
it terrifies me at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, as long as your writer's remorse was just more of an emotional reaction
Yeah.
because you were nervous and not because you actually wanted to take anything out of it.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, I know that feeling.
Yeah. And I don't care what the genre is that you're writing. I think that every author goes through that experience of, "Oh my goodness, I have put myself out there." And you feel so vulnerable because, right, it's like nobody's going to buy it, or people are going to read it and they're going to hate it, or I'm going to get terrible. I mean, your mind just takes off and goes to the races. But it's a
Yeah. And it's like
very
even if you
vulnerable.
get positive,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry.
No, go for it. Come on.
Like I hope I don't jinx it. But like I didn't even get any negative. I wonder if that makes me question more if people are just telling me the truth. Because I'd rather have negative real
No.
real feedback than like because people are like, oh, like this was so great. I actually really liked it. And I'm like, are you just lying to me? And I'm not trying to fish for compliments. I genuinely just like get really worried that people are just lying to me because
Uh-huh.
they know me.
Hmm.
And I think that is really hard.
Uh-huh.
But it's just funny because I think so much of it you do make up in your head that like
Hmm.
how I like it and you're your own worst critic most of the time.
Yep.
Um and even if people love it,
Hmm.
you're always gonna feel that
Right.
remorse of like, oh, I could have, maybe I shouldn't have said this or maybe I should say this. And another thing that I think is really interesting, going back to some of the things that I learned that were surprising, was kind of going on to this theme. Sometimes people would come up to me and say, "Oh, my favorite part of your book was this." And I was actually
Hmm.
part of this other podcast where the person brought up his quote unquote favorite part. And I was like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, that's my least favorite part. Like, the part that resonated with him so much
Hmm.
I was like, why couldn't you have picked any other part of the book? And I still stand by what I said, but I was like,
Uh-huh.
I just don't think that's my best work. I think everybody has like their own way of seeing their own work. And this was a couple, maybe like 3 years even after I wrote the book.
Wow.
But at first, it made me feel like, come on, like, couldn't you have picked that other part? But then as I thought about it, I was like, how cool is it that
Hmm.
everybody interprets with any aspect of art, like with whatever you're creating,
Hmm.
it's going to be, I mean, that's why they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder,
Hmm.
right? Like it's so true. I don't like using cliches, but they're cliches for a reason. And people will perceive and take pieces of your work based on their own experiences, based on their own lens, which
Hmm.
is such a beautiful thing because there's no such thing as objective
Hmm.
value or inherent like this is the best part of this book. I mean, sometimes people might agree on what they think the best part of the book was or what
Hmm.
they think the best part of this artwork is, but it's really cool knowing that even if you have your favorite, least favorite pieces of art or whatever you're creating,
Mhm.
other people will need to hear what you have to say, even if you aren't the most proud of it. As long as
Mhm.
you're not offensive. Like
Mhm.
as long as you're not doing anything illegal or offensive, I think we're good. And even sometimes that technically can cause a lot of like really inspiring change. I still don't recommend it.
Uh-huh.
Um, but it's just a cool thing that I think like I'm continuing to learn things
Mhm.
uh after the book that I didn't even put in there as well. And that's one of them.
Okay, so now my next question is, because I'm dying of curiosity, is there another book on the way? Because
So I've had a
I believe that there is at least one book in each and every one of us, but once you write one book, it's almost like eating potato chips. You can't stop at just one.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's funny because that's like one of the a big question that I get asked is like it's kind of like when you I don't have kids, but you know when you have a like somebody who has a kid and everybody's like, "Oh, well, when are you gonna have another one?" Right? It's always like I wonder if that's why everybody's brain goes like that. I haven't experienced that personally, but it just kind of reminded me of that, so I thought it's
Mhm.
funny. But I think so. I've had different ideas of things, but I think I don't have anything in the works necessarily right now, but you
Mhm.
never know because I sometimes just have a tendency to do things without telling people.
Oh, I do know
Wink,
that.
wink,
Yes,
blink
nod,
twice if
nod,
you no.
nudge.
Um, but I am just really passionate about, I'm still passionate about the reason why I wrote the book, which
Mhm.
is gathering that information, learning from people, and sharing not even my own voice, but just sharing other people's voices and
Mhm.
whatever medium that looks like, whether it's a book, a podcast, a documentary, which working
Mhm.
on the
Mhm.
last two right now. The book is a little bit more of a finite medium, but still doing my podcast, still doing working on a little kind of passion project documentary right now for mental health. And I definitely see whether that means a future book or not, the content will still be there in whatever medium it's meant to be.
Mhm.
Um, but I have had some ideas. So
I'm sure you have. Okay,
got
so
to keep
let's
you on the
go.
edge of your seat.
I am on the edge of my seat. I'm always on the edge of my seat. So, since you mentioned the podcast and you brought that up, what prompted you to start a podcast? Did you wake up one morning and say, "Hey, I think this sounds like a really fun and good idea"?
Yeah, great question. I actually really like I shouldn't say I always wanted to start a podcast because that would that's not necessarily true. I think after writing the book,
Mhm.
because the book was a finite medium, right? You can't continue to expand on the book and share that. I really liked the idea of doing a podcast, but I didn't have a specific like I didn't want to write it or I didn't want to make a podcast about defining success. I didn't want it to be a complete extension of it, but I
Mhm.
did fall in love with interviewing people, learning from people, and sharing that. And I
Mhm.
knew podcasting was a great medium to do that.
Mhm.
Actually, right after I wrote my book, I met somebody who was he started a podcast. It was like the first week of college. And he had a podcast going. I was like, that's so cool. But all the advice that I heard was that you need to niche down to be successful. And then it's like, okay, well, what does success really mean if you're,
Mhm.
niche? So we could get into that. But
Mhm.
I just kind of pushed it off. And I was in college because I never had a very specific idea. Like I didn't want to be restrained to one niche topic.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I think I had a conversation with, it was one of my first guests. His name's Charles Scott. And I told him, I was like, I really want to do this podcast, but I'm trying to make it very specific. And he's like, why do you need to make it very specific? And I was like, well, everything online says you need to pick a very specific niche if you want to, you know, have a good podcast. And he was like, well, and it's funny because his whole conversation that I had on my show where I interviewed him was on authenticity.
Mm.
And he was like, so he made a very great point that it's like, first of all, I'm not doing this for a job, right? Second of all, success is, as I should have learned 5 years earlier, defined by me.
Uh-huh.
And I think I just kind of had this revelation of I don't need to have a podcast about the best car to buy when you're 20 years old. That's
Mm-hmm.
probably not a good example of a podcast, but you know what I mean? Like everybody's like, you have to pick such a specific niche. And I was like, I don't have to do that. And so I started the podcast, kind of just continuing those same conversations around mental health, personal growth, which is a pretty big range. But since then, it's kind of transitioned as I started to notice and pull themes from the conversations I've had. It's transitioned, not necessarily branding wise, but like we talk a lot about connection. We talk a lot about courage
Mm-hmm.
and also about curiosity, regardless of whether I was talking to you, right, a ninja,
Mm-hmm.
or, the director of the Peace Corps, or whether I was talking to a person who started their own business and quitting their full-time job, getting into that, like having a variety of guests, knowing that we're talking about mental health, personal growth, and the fact that everybody is saying these same things in their own way without
Mm-hmm.
necessarily using the words, but we're coming back to connection, we're coming back to courage. Like maybe that's the root of, I don't want to say the problem, but maybe that's the solution, is
Mm-hmm.
being more connected and being more courageous. Like maybe that's what everybody needs to do regardless of what they're trying to become, or. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of high level where I started the podcast as a way to continue those conversations and interviews,
Mm-hmm.
similar to how I did in the book, because I loved having those conversations. And I was already having a lot of those conversations. So I was like, might as well record them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And share that. And it's kind of come into what it is now.
Okay, so how did you kind of like zero in on mental health and personal growth? Was there a
Yeah. So it's that
catalyst?
it's interesting because, well, I was always interested. I got that curiosity about success when I was
Mm-hmm.
in school, because everybody's
Mm-hmm.
like, I want to do this, but you know, I, you know, we talked a little bit about that. Like, so that's how I got my start on thinking, I really want to dive into success and becoming the best version of yourself, whatnot. So I did a lot of that when I was in high school and was like, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want to be all these things. And I didn't have, I actually kind of thought mental health when I was younger. I knew it was important,
Mm-hmm.
but I always saw it as like mental health is a focus on, um, you know, how can we break the stigma around anxiety, depression? And I didn't really experience a lot of anxiety and depression in high school and college. And I just saw mental health as like that. I didn't see it as the absence, or I did see it as the absence of mental health disorders. So I didn't
Mm-hmm.
really think about it a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I think as, and then I had like some different experiences, like I broke my leg. I had like I hit a bunch of kind of road bumps. And in that process where I was kind of went through a negative mental, I don't, it was just an experience, let me tell you that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You took a
and
lot
I
of
think in that
hits.
process, I took a lot of hits,
Yes.
literally and figuratively. Well, the leg I broke from jumping off a bridge, I didn't actually get hit on that one, but it was
Oh, it's still a hit. I mean,
stupid
you hit.
decisions.
Yes,
So
there you
I
go.
guess, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, not fun. But what I started to realize, I think when I was experiencing that, the reason why I've always thought I didn't pay attention too much to mental health was because I saw mental health as like, oh, well, it's just about feeling sad, or it's
Mm-hmm.
just about feeling worried. And I was very like philosophical thinker. And I was like, always just thinking, like, that's just the meaning of life. Like, we're supposed to feel sad. We're supposed to feel worry. Like, even if you like look in the Bible, right? Like, there's a time for this, a time for that. Like, that is what we are supposed to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't think too much about mental health just because I thought it was about feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But when I experienced it personally, I realized that it really isn't about feelings. It's actually affecting how you're showing up in the world
Mm-hmm.
and who you're showing up for. And I had a lot of people come to me and say, like, Christina, you are not yourself. Like you are
Oh,
not
oh,
not in like, oh my gosh, I cried when people said that to me because I was like,
oh.
I can experience pain. I can experience like all these feelings. I can experience this hurt. But to have like my closest friends come to me and say, you aren't you. I don't know
Mhm,
why, but that really just hit me because at that point, it's not just affecting me. Like feeling
mhm,
sad, yeah, it can affect me all. And that was my opinion on it. It was like I can feel sad. It doesn't hurt anybody else. But when I
mhm,
realized that my mental health was affecting the people around me, it was because it was affecting me showing up for the world. That's when I was like, wait, this is so much more than
mhm.
feeling sad, feeling worried, all these things. And that's when I was like, well, if other people are feeling this way, if other people are feeling like they're not able to show up for themselves and for other people, this is like a problem. And not to negate people's feelings. Like, yes,
Mhm.
people's feelings matter, but feeling sad and all that, like, that's part of life. But if you are not experiencing life and showing up for yourself and others in a way that you're supposed to. Like the reason why you're put on this world, I believe everybody was put on this world for, I mean, multiple reasons. But that I think broke my heart because
Mm,
we just need people to be showing up for
mhm,
themselves and for the world in their fullest forms of themselves, like whatever that looks like, unless
mhm.
you're a psychopath. We don't need the psychopaths. And no offense if you're a psychopath. Like maybe actually, no, maybe they just need to get help.
Yeah.
I don't know any personal psychopaths. I'm just like thinking about them. Anyway, so that's
Oh,
kind of how my journey from kind of thinking mental health was fluffy to realizing it's not. And I never said mental health was fluffy to anybody. Because I did care, like I do care about people's feelings. I always have, but I just
mhm.
never personally really kind of going back to you can know something consciously, but not really
Right.
experiencing it. And
Mhm,
that's what I needed to do to realize this is way more. And then I got into the research, and oh my goodness, it is scary and sad. And
mhm,
that's what actually drove um the passion to working on the mental health documentary. I was actually looking
mhm,
for something like that because I'm like, these are scary statistics. Like, if these are
mhm.
scary as numbers, this stuff that's coming out, imagine like take a little bit of time to realize that these aren't just numbers. Like, these are
They're
people.
people. Mhm.
And like that is so, and just the rate, yeah. So I've kind of leaned into that project and really hoping people understand that yes, mental health is important, not just because we want people to be happy, but because, and again, I don't think that that's the whole meaning of the human experience. I don't
Right.
even think that's success,
Right.
but because we need people to show up for this world, for
Mhm,
themselves, for others. And that's the whole reason why we're here.
mhm. Well, for society in general, I mean, just looking around, where I live here in Denver, and you can't go through an intersection, you see the homeless and these people wandering around, and and it gets cold here in Denver. Sometimes it snows and we get storms and everything, and all I could think of is this is somebody's brother, son, uncle, father, nephew, whatever. I mean, these are human beings, and to get to this point in their lives, what had to happen to them, and what is it that we're not maybe offering them as a lifeline and a way
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. And it's again going back to that whole like, they are just, or I shouldn't say they, but it's all just numbers until you have an
Yeah.
experience with it yourself or you have somebody in your life who's experienced it. And a lot of times, you know, that's when that's when it's too late. We shouldn't be focusing on mental health when people
Hmm.
are diagnosed with depression. We shouldn't be focusing on mental health when people have
Right.
diagnosed anxiety or when people become homeless. Like we shouldn't, yes, don't get me wrong. We should focus on like helping those people and fixing those symptoms of the problem. But let's figure out what is causing these issues
Hmm.
and do something about that. Like, let's create environments that are
Hmm.
conducive, whether that's workplaces, personal homes, there ever like so many people, so there are so many professions that can have an impact on this, and not only professions but also as an individual. Every single person has an opportunity every day, unless you don't, even if you do, even if you don't see other people, but even just being on social media, every single person has an opportunity every day to help somebody else, like somebody else's mental health,
Mm-hmm.
just by showing up, just by reaching out, by complimenting people when you see something that you
Mm-hmm.
admire, like becoming more connected,
Mm-hmm.
and for yourself, becoming more courageous. And I always thought courage was a fluffy word too, so it's kind of funny that I've changed my mind on that.
Mm-hmm.
But you know these things are things that we can take care of today, so we don't have to wait for people to become depressed or anxious or
Mm-hmm.
homeless, and I really hope and pray that nobody has to experience that for themselves. And I really hope and pray that people kind of, are able to open their eyes before it's too late for their family and friends.
Since you brought up social media, which I'm not on it as much as I used to be, just because I can't deal with everything. But at one point when I was pretty active, and I would read other people's posts and stuff, and I thought, you know what, this is not conducive to a healthy conversation or a healthy exchange or environment. And I started intentionally responding to people in a very positive, upbeat way. I would only post really positive, posts or whatever. And I was really surprised at the, feedback that I would get from that. And then how other people's posts and stuff they would get out of the gutter and start putting more positive stuff out there. So it can be done. It's not, impossible.
Yeah, I mean, I think social media is just a vessel. I think there's a lot of really great ways to connect on social media, but
Mm-hmm.
it's also important to kind of ask yourself, like, is, is the way that I am kind of going about this helpful or hurtful, or do I even need to be on social media? I think for some people, it gets so bad to the point where they need to just not have it, which is great
Mm-hmm.
for that. But I've been the same way. Like I started just like really trying to pretend like almost as if I'm in the room with the person who, okay, this
Mm-hmm.
sounds, I didn't think about this before I said it, but like I see a post and it's like I almost respond to it as if that friend is telling me about their life,
Mm-hmm.
which I'm not saying that that's what people should do, but I do feel so much more connected because I'm not commenting because I feel like I need to comment. I'm not, you know, doing something, and I didn't ever like leave negative comments or anything, but I really do think there's a way to have that connection and community. But
Mm-hmm.
because of the way that social media is designed, it makes it a challenge because
Mm-hmm.
it makes it challenging, but it can be done, like you
Mm-hmm.
said.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so now I want to kind of pivot a little bit because as you're talking about courage and curiosity, I'm really curious how you found the courage to step onto the mat in a Brazilian jiu-jitsu martial arts school.
Yeah, so it's funny because actually 2022, I made a yearly bucket list
Mm-hmm.
of things that I wanted to do before the end of the year. And I did this because I had a normal bucket list, but when there's no deadline, it's really not actionable, at least for me. So one of the things that I put on the bucket list was to do 52 things in a year that scared me. And so that's about once a week. As you know, there are 52 weeks in a
Yeah, that's
year.
a lot.
Little lesson. Yeah. So just picking one thing that, and it didn't have to be like crazy scary. Like I know on our podcast, I think you talked a little bit about when you got swept away at sea or putting yourself at the foot of the master and things like that.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be anything crazy, scary, but something that adds just a little bit of resistance that is probably good for you, that kind of breaks. You're choosing one time a week to choose discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
And so I tried to schedule it out so it'd be once a week. The reason why I said 52 times a year was just because sometimes if you get in a habit and then you miss a week, I wanted to be able to go back and say like, okay, I can get back on track, just habit wise, which by the way, that was one of the biggest things that made a huge difference in my life. I'm not normally a person to say that, but it really made a big difference. And it was the beginning of my it was beginning of the year, I think like January or so, when it was my senior year of college, second semester.
Mhm.
And I wanted to take a kickboxing class, but all the kickboxing classes were booked, obviously, because kickboxing's cool. And I had done it before, but I was looking at the other classes and I saw jujitsu. And I was like, well, I didn't really know much about jujitsu. I have seen MMA and I was like, why are those people hitting each other and getting bloody? That looks like nothing I want to be part of. And obviously I looked into just like Googling, what is jujitsu? I saw that somebody said it was comparable to like human chess, which I was like, oh, that's interesting. I never knew how to play chess as more of a checkers girl,
Mhm.
but I was like, oh, that's interesting. And it seemed like a good mental challenge, but physical challenge. But I was also kind of like, this is weird. I don't know if I want to do this. But then I thought back to, oh, I have this 52 challenge. I called it my weekly fear task. I'm trying to change that because it sounds a little negative to say fear, but also now I call it my weekly courage task. But I was like, well, if I do it, then I can put it on there. And so I signed up. And because the school had an affiliation with a local MMA gym, that's why I was able to take classes through the school, like paying my tuition, but then
Mhm.
going to the gym. And it was mixed in with all of the other classes, which I'm really grateful that they did that because I think without it, especially with the price and cost of joining martial art, it's super
Mhm.
expensive and also just a big commitment to be like, oh, I want to try this thing that I've never done
Right.
before. It's like $200 a month, or actually, it was probably like 120 at the time, and of course, it just continues to go up.
Of
Um,
course.
inflation, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I was like, okay, like I'm gonna try it out. And that was really, I think if I didn't have the weekly challenge of doing something, I think I probably would have been like, oh, there's no kickboxing class. Like, let me back out
Mhm.
because it was uncomfortable and it was weird at first.
Yeah, because you're getting down and dirty. I mean, that is a very,
Well,
what I
don't say
would refer
that.
to as
Yeah.
intimate art, because you're not at a distance. I mean, you're not holding 6-foot bow staffs,
Yeah. And
you're
even just
you're
like
close.
yeah, and I had never wrestled before. I didn't have any background in anything like that. So I was like, I remember the first day they were going over the different positions, and I was like, this is weird. Like, I was like, I don't know. And luckily, there were a lot of other girls in the class, which I think made it. And the coach was a girl. I think that really helped as well. That
Mhm.
I felt like I wasn't just, it just felt good, but also still like, what are we doing right now? Like, this is just weird. Again, because I didn't have that wrestling background or even just all my sports athletic background was like volleyball, basketball, softball, spike ball, like all the things with balls that you throw and hit and nothing where you actually had to touch another person besides, I mean, I've done kickboxing before, but even that, you're like punching people. You're not like choking them, you know?
You're
Right?
not rolling around on the floor. I always say, and I really don't know anything about BJJ, but I just know from, watching a few things and stuff. And because what my former training partner, after she left the dojo, she went back crazy over BJJ and she still does it. And, she keeps trying to talk me into taking classes with her. She says it's a women's group. You'd really like it. And all I could think of is bare feet in my face.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've had some of those experiences.
And it's like, I
Yeah.
really think that's not my style.
Or sweat dripping from the face into your mouth.
Oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah.
If sweat kind of drips a little bit on me or whatever, okay. But, we wear really big, thick, heavy gis. So,
Hmm.
so we do kind of sweat a lot, but not like BJJ. So, no, no one has ever dripped on me
Yeah. And not
in
where like their
21
head
years.
is like over you. Yeah.
Yeah, no, no.
Yeah.
And we do a little bit of floor work because, my sensei always says the one group you don't want to have to deal with is someone who knows BJJ.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh, right.
That's funny.
Ugh. Bare feet. Ugh.
Yeah.
Anyhow,
Or when you
so
get the biters. Have you ever had the biters?
no.
There was a person who bit. Yeah, we don't need to talk about that.
Ew.
I
Yeah,
don't want to
no.
give anybody ideas.
Okay,
And I
yeah,
don't know if
no.
it's an accident, like if your mouth is open. or what, or you're really just trying to get a competitive advantage, but don't
Yeah.
recommend it.
Yeah. So no, we don't, we, no, we're a classic martial art. And
Yeah.
I think I better stick with that because I would probably just, I'd lose it.
Yeah.
So
It's very important to get,
you're
oh,
more
sorry.
courageous than I am.
Well, no, the other thing okay, sorry, I didn't mean to, I appreciate that compliment.
Mm.
But the other thing I was actually thinking about the other day is like how with courage, like there's no thing that is objectively like more, I always say that word,
Oh,
people make
that's
fun of me for it. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. So it always makes me laugh. But there's no I don't know another word to say other than objectively. Like there's no thing that I think is, I don't mean to keep saying it, objectively like more courageous or less courageous. It's fully a matter of how much you've done that thing. Like for you,
Mhm.
like I could say, what you did is so much more courageous than me because like you're throwing swords, like weird weapons, like that is crazy to me
Mhm.
because I haven't done it. And I think
Mhm.
to me, to somebody else doing BJJ before, I'm like, that's crazy. But
Mhm.
then when you do it and you get that momentum and you take those little steps, then it starts to be like, wait, this is actually pretty comfortable. And then all of a
Mhm.
sudden you're like, because sometimes I think about people who do the national anthem at games.
Oh
And I'm
God.
like,
Yeah.
that's crazy because I'm
Yeah.
looking at it through the lens of my experience, not through the lens of theirs,
Right.
which not to discredit anything that anybody ever does because it takes a lot of courage
Right.
just to take the first step. So I still applaud them for, doing that. And, I still think it took courage for me to do what I was doing. It took courage for you to do what you were doing. But also, like, I think, again, I appreciate the compliment to say that, but it just reminded me what I was thinking before is like, it's just a matter of taking that first step and then
Mhm.
it becomes a little bit less uncomfortable until
Mhm.
you actually start to realize, oh, this is just what I do.
And the word that you said you keep using is objective, or how
Yeah.
do you, what's the word?
objective
So
Objectively
I think maybe another word would be measurable,
measurable.
because
How am I
when
trying to
something
communicate the opposite of subjective? But it because like there's no, I can't even think of another word for it. You know what I mean? Because
yeah,
something could be objective and not measurable, right? Or
yeah,
no? I do like that.
I'm gonna have to pull out my thesaurus later and take and
Yeah.
check it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. And it could be yeah. I guess it depends on what context you're using.
Okay, so now at what point did you fall in love with BJJ, or did you not?
Yeah, so I did it for the semester, the 3 months,
Mm-hmm.
and I really started to like it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of just, it goes back to a lot of that curiosity. I think I was just
Mm-hmm.
very intrigued by it because I was like, I still don't know a lot. I'm
Mm-hmm.
learning a little bit every day. And I think the community at the gym that I went to at the time, there were really nice girls there, and I started to develop friendships. And I think over time, those friendships, I don't know if it was like I was conditioned into liking jujitsu because of the friendships or both.
Mm-hmm.
I'd
Mm-hmm.
like to think that I would still love BJJ and jujitsu if I didn't have the community, but
Mm-hmm.
tying back to connection, right? Like so much of
Mm-hmm.
what makes it so enjoyable for me is the people who I've met in the process. And like I said, there was such a strong group of girls there that I absolutely love. And even the gym that I went to next, like they call themselves the girl gang. And it's like just so, I guess a lot of gyms might do that, but
Mm-hmm.
like they're just so supportive, like so uplifting. And it's so great to be able to have those relationships that challenge you, but
Mm-hmm.
also terrify you, but also like support you.
Mm-hmm.
Like they can be, choking you out one minute and the next minute she's like, oh, like, what are you doing later? You want to make muffins? Like I and it's just I think to be able to have that, that was what I that's what I really needed to actually fall in love with the sport.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think the mental component, the physical like challenge component, and the social component, to be able to have all three of those in
Mm-hmm.
one hobby. Also, sometimes I like to say like I don't like to say this, it's just something I think in my head. I don't tell anybody this. But
Well, you're
it's
telling us now.
I'm telling you now. So yeah, this will be the first time and then I'll just start saying it all the time. But it's like you have a strength hobby, which I always consider
Mm-hmm.
lifting, sanity hobby, which I always think is like, running or writing. Like there's a lot of different ways to like really help your mental health. And then a social hobby.
Mhm.
Wait, a social and then also skill too.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
I know people say other things about like their hobbies, but I think to be able to have all four of those five, I don't know how many things I said.
Mhm.
Um, but having all of those in one is just like this, I would say perfect triad, but I think I said four things. Of like, wow, to be able to have all of this and
Right.
you're constantly challenged, but also you see the progress you're making, and also like I'm constantly driven by that curiosity of like, oh, well, like what about this?
Mhm.
Um, so again, going back to your original question, which was the time that it
Mhm.
took, I think the first 3 months I really liked it. And then the next 3 months, they were doing a summer like special. And
Mhm.
I was at that point after the semester was over, I was like, I don't know if I want to, commit to doing this as part of my whole life. But I did
Mhm.
say I can commit to the summer. So did it for another 3 months. So that at that point, we're about 6 months in. And then after that, I was like, my connections even grew stronger. And I was
Mhm.
like, I can't leave these people. I can't leave this
Mhm.
sport. And I think that was also probably the time where I was like, it would be so weird to not do it because
Mhm.
I love being able to go to the gym, learn the
Mhm.
moves, do the moves. And there's just something so fun and exciting and challenging about the sport, but then
Mhm.
also the people. And they just continue, those two
Mhm.
things continue to reinforce each other.
Well, there's nothing like doing an activity and sharing an activity with a group of people who have the same passion that you do about it, and you kind of like feed each other's soul. And that's kind of what ballet always was for me, even right from the very beginning. And then martial arts, it took a while for me to find that connection. Yeah, because I was kind of like a fish out of water, but
Yeah.
you
And you were
really need
rocking
that.
in your chair before, right?
Yeah,
Before
I
you
was rocking in my
saying
car.
affirmations.
You can do this, you can do this, you can do this. Oh goodness,
That's funny.
those
I
are
didn't
good.
do that, but it did very similar to your story. Like there was a good period of time where I was pretty scared to still just keep showing up. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember when I started doing the Muay Thai classes, about 3 months in, when I started doing the summer stuff, I
Uh-huh.
think I started doing kickboxing and jujitsu. And I remember there's a Friday class, and it was just beginner class, but I was
Mm-hmm.
always very scared of like, what if there's no other girls there?
Right.
And I show up, and because it's Friday, there's no other classes. There wasn't anybody who saw me walk in, and I walked into the locker room, and I didn't see anybody else's bags in the locker room, and I was like, oh no, like I'm gonna have to like, and yeah. So this was probably it might have been within the first 3 months. I'm guessing it was really early on because
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, I got comfortable, really comfortable over time.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, I really hope somebody else shows up that like, I know that's a girl because I didn't know a lot of people at that time. And I ended up leaving, like, I ended up just sneaking back out and going back
Uh-huh.
home because I was like, I don't know. And I mean, the guys were all very nice, but I just think
Mm-hmm.
you never know who you're dealing with. Like sometimes,
Yep.
yeah.
You're absolutely right. You never know.
Yeah. So I try to be careful about just, now I'm a lot better at like assessing the
Mm-hmm.
vibes.
Mm-hmm.
And but in the beginning I was just scared. And I'm happy to say that I'm not scared
Uh-huh.
anymore. And like now I definitely do see it as a challenge, and I'm able to, depending on what it is, obviously your comfort zone just expands, and then there's still other things that
Mm-hmm.
terrify you. But
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, so I still had those moments where
Mm-hmm.
I was scared even after I did it as well.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I rocked it all like
Are
you,
you
but
still, oh, please. Are you still training?
yeah. So I actually, when I came out here, I promised my coach, the one from the second gym. So I was at an
Mm-hmm.
MMA gym at first, and then I went to a all BJJ gym. And then I was like, hey, even though he didn't tell me to do anything, but I like to make my own accountability. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna find a gym within the first 2 weeks I'm out there. Because again, going back to that momentum piece, I was like, I know
Right.
if I don't set a deadline for myself, it'll end up, oh, all of a sudden it's 5 months later. And I'm like, well, where did that
Right.
go?
Yeah.
And he was always super encouraging. He is still super encouraging. And so I found a gym out here in San Diego. And yeah, I've been loving, and I'm back into Muay Thai too. So I'm able to do both. And Yeah.
Tell us about Muay Thai. Muay Thai, I don't even know how to say it. I've heard of it
Muay Thai,
before,
yeah.
but I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. So Art of Eight Limbs. About
Okay.
all I know. No, just kidding. It's kickboxing with elbows and knees. And I don't like to personally spar a lot because I don't like to get hit in the head,
Mhm.
ideally. But I do love the training component of it. It definitely, it's a pretty consistent workout and also still a mental workout in a lot of ways.
Uh-huh.
Also, the other day, I just realized, when people say roll with the punches,
Uh-huh.
like, oh, you got to roll with the punches, or even just like, hey, just roll with it, right? I realized, I think this is true. I didn't look it up. It just kind of clicked in my brain. So if this is false, just fact check me. But like rolling, obviously, it's a boxing defense. Like, you know what
Mm-hmm.
rolling is, right? Where
Mm-hmm.
you like roll
Mm-hmm.
under
Yeah.
the. I did not realize that that's probably why people say roll with the punches, or like, okay, with the roll with the punches, that's what made it click. Because I'm like, oh, obviously, roll with the punches. Like you're rolling as a defense,
Uh-huh.
but and like you're kind of flowing with it. But I never like I never I just hear people say, "Oh, just roll with it." And I think that's what it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I crazy for just now figuring that out or did you know that?
No, hey, we have many, many pearls of wisdom and insights that just pop out of our mouths when we're doing these interviews and these discussions, which I think is really fantastic.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's funny because I had done, I'd boxed and did kickboxing for a little while and I was like, "Wait a second." And it was like the light bulb moment of, "Oh, that's what that means?"
Well, let's talk about another light bulb moment. The moment that light bulb went off in your head, whatever, and you said, "Okie dokie, I'm going to compete in BJJ." Talk about courage.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's funny because when I started jujitsu, there was a lot of talk from my coach at that first gym about competing. She was always getting the word out about like we're having this retreat, there's this competition this weekend. And I was like, oh, that sounds like fun. I should do that. But it was still within the first 6 months of training. And I always thought, oh, I'm not ready for that. And which now looking back on that, you're never too like early on in the sport for this case, unless it's like your first day or your first couple weeks.
Hmm.
Like obviously your coach will be like, okay, you're not ready for that yet. But there is that whole bracket for super beginners essentially.
Wow.
So yeah. Do you have competitions?
Oh no, we do not
Oh,
compete. We
little
we
sports.
compete, with ourselves, but not with each other. And it's a very yeah, our whole mission in the art that I study is to go home. We want
Mm-hmm.
to be the one to go home. So, we learn how to evade attacks, avoid attacks, recognize them before they even begin, just so, try and diffuse a confrontation. And no, we don't want to fight. No, let's not do this. No, please, no. Oh, well, I said no, but now I have to show you no. So that's
Yeah.
kind of our whole philosophy.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And also with the weapons, I don't know how that would work. You can't really tap out when somebody throws a sword at you? Um
Good point.
but yeah, yeah. So I you know, in the beginning I was like, "Oh, I'm not ready. I'm not ready." Which looking back on that, I probably could have been ready, especially,
Hmm.
between that 3 to 6 month mark just to get the experience. Like, yeah, maybe
Hmm.
I wouldn't have done the best, or I mean, who knows really? If I
Hmm.
was paired with other people who were in the same bracket, it probably would have been
Hmm.
fine. But I was always pushing it off because I felt like I wasn't ready. And then after that, I kind of just started to get in the groove of things. And it was kind of one of those things where I was like, oh, there's always going to be time to compete.
Hmm. Hmm.
And, obviously time passed. And I did have a little bit of a break, like a 8 week break. I'm trying to remember when I broke my leg. I didn't get surgery, but I healed pretty fast. And I did take a little bit break from it then. But aside from that, I was just always kind of like in the back of my mind.
Hmm.
And I just got in the routine of things, right? Like just started kind of going on autopilot and just didn't think about competing. Well, then I went to the next gym that I was at, which was all jujitsu, not kickboxing as well or wrestling or anything. Well, I think they do wrestling, but they're a very competition heavy gym. They
Uh-huh.
do a lot of like IBJJ. I know you might not know the different competitions and
Mhm.
promotions and things like that, but they do a lot of those competitions. So I already saw that like they were talking about it. And it actually wasn't until I got the opportunity to come out to San Diego to work on this documentary that I was like, well, if I move, I don't know if I'm gonna find a gym. I don't know if I'm gonna which is a silly question, like a silly thing to say because there's so many gyms here, but I just didn't know if I
Mhm.
would have the time. And I was like, I really got this urge to compete because I was like, it's now or never. Not never,
Mhm.
but hopefully. It's now or like, a couple years from now. And I think
Mhm.
that urgency is what made me be like, I need to decide if I'm going to compete and learn from the competition and kind of get it over with in a sense, or if I'm going to wait until I feel ready. But if I waited, I'd always have that mental load in the back of my head thinking like,
Mhm.
oh, I should probably compete soon. And then it would put more pressure on me. So part of me really just wanted to, sounds bad to say get it over with, but just do it because I had been
Mhm.
training for about 2.5 years at that time.
Mm. Mhm.
And I made the decision in December to like I got that opportunity to come out to San Diego and it
Mhm.
was the next month. So I moved in January. I made the decision to come out here, basically quit my job and come out here and work on this. And I was like, well, what competitions do we have between now and then? And there were no other competitions before the time that I was leaving besides like I had one opportunity basically. Actually, I had two. The first one I was about to do, and then the girl who I was going to do it with backed out. So then I got kind of cold feet and then backed out. But then there was the one the following week.
Mhm.
The one the following week was the same time when all of my gym was out at a competition. It was Nogi Worlds. I think they were in Las Vegas or something.
Mhm.
And so I was like, I have this one opportunity to do it, but I don't have a coach. I don't have anybody else willing to do it with me because everybody else is competing somewhere else. And like it's this weekend basically because I had pulled out of that first one and then it was the following weekend. So it was
Mhm.
Tuesday and I was at my class and I was talking to my coach. I was like, "Hey, I really kind of want to compete before I leave. But the competition is this weekend. What do you think?" And at first he was like, "Do you really have to like he was like, I don't think it's a good idea. Like we're not going to be there to like who's going to be your coach?
Mhm.
You have not had like enough train." He was like, "You're." He didn't say that I was bad, obviously, but he was like, "You didn't have the time to train." He's like, "We normally like to have a few weeks of prep for
Right.
competition focused training, not just like general training." Because I had been training for pretty consistently, but I just didn't have that like I didn't have a game plan going into it at all.
Mhm.
And I think he said that, but I kind of wanted him, when you want somebody to say something, like you
Mhm.
ask somebody what they think, but then they say it and you're like, darn it, I wish you would have said the opposite. That's kind of what I felt because I kind of
Mhm.
wanted to just do it, but I wanted his reassurance. And obviously, with any coach or person who is there to support you, they want what's best for you, even if that
Mhm.
comes in the form of an opinion that you don't like, and that comes
Mhm.
in that. But at the end of the day, like I think he started to sense that I did want to just kind of go for it, and then he started to change his uh perspective on it. Like if you choose to do it, we're going to support you, which again goes for
Mhm.
anybody who wants you to see you do well and support you. Yes, they might have that opinion that you don't like at first, but at the end of the day, it's your decision. If you make the decision, they're going to be behind your back supporting you. He was like,
Mhm.
I won't be able to be there physically, obviously, but you know, I still mentally support you. And I was pretty new to this gym too, so it's not like, I'd been there for a few months, but I still felt a lot of support from them
Mhm.
and all the girls there, and it's a great community. But I was like, okay, like I'll just sit and think about it. So I sat on it from Tuesday to Wednesday. Keep in
Mhm.
mind the competition's on Saturday. And I was like, I
Mhm.
think I'm gonna do it. And then Wednesday, I texted my old coach, the girl from the first gym, and was like, hey, any chance you're gonna be at this competition? And if so, any chance you could help me out and just like corner me and coach me? And she said, yeah, I'm going to be at this open mat at, again, the old gym
Uh-huh.
tonight. Like, I would love to work on some things with you, which was so amazing to have her help. And then I also reached out to some other people who
Mm-hmm.
were from that gym, and they like really helped me, which I'm so grateful for. And then after that, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then I made the decision mentally, but I didn't sign up until Thursday, which was the very last day. I should have, lesson learned. And if you're listening to this too, like
Mm-hmm.
thinking about signing up super last minute, it might sound like, yeah, like just go for it. But I say don't do that for two reasons. One, the training, I do recommend having more training, competition focus. So you have time to visualize, you have time to actually prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And two, so you don't pay full price because the later you go, the more you have to pay. So I ended up
Oh.
paying full price, which is, I mean, it was expensive, definitely worth it. But I was like, dang, if I would have just signed up a few months ago, I could have saved $100 at least, like maybe more, probably more actually. Anyway, I don't really want to think about it, but lesson learned because a regret is always a lesson learned. And so aside the point, signed up very last minute. The
Mm-hmm.
day and then the following day was the weigh-ins, and then the following day was the competition.
Okay,
So,
I have to interrupt. What's a weigh-in?
oh, where you like weigh yourself to make sure that you're in the range of what, like, so you're in the right bracket. So like people go against other people who are in their same range weight because it wouldn't be fair for me to go against somebody who's like 100 pounds, or
Okay, got
it
it.
wouldn't be fair for, and there is like a division where I think they put all the weights together, but they just get your weight similar to how they do in MMA or I think kickboxing, like other competition sports, just to keep it fair.
Mm-hmm.
I had the weigh in, and I didn't like cut weight or anything like that, which was nice that I didn't have to do that. Um, yeah, and then I went to the competition the next day. Actually, there were supposed to be other people there, but it ended up just being my coach and I. Um, and her other person that she was going to coach backed out, and I didn't really have like. I'm kind of glad that I don't want to say it would have been nice if other people came, but I also was already like so stressed about it that sometimes it's just nice to like,
Yeah.
what if I lose? Like everybody's not that I'm worried about other people seeing me losing because they'd still like know that I lost, but I think it's just it's that more so that added pressure before as opposed to like people seeing that I lost after,
Right.
which I didn't
Right.
lose, by the way. I should get that out of my head, but yeah.
So basically you won.
Yes. So I did a no-gi and then a gi. The gi or the no-gi, the first one, which I was more nervous about because the girl terrified me. Not to like, I mean, she just had a straight face, you know, nothing against black hair, but she had black hair, and like she just looked like she was very strong. And I don't
Mm-hmm.
know, I just feel like darker hair just seems more intimidating. And yeah, and she just like did not look happy, and I'm just like over there like trying to get in the zone because my coach, she was like, she's gonna go out there and kill you, because I think my coach saw that I was like kind of like happy, like smiling, like excited, and I couldn't put on like a game face for the life of me. And she was like, Christina, she's gonna try to kill you. And I was like, I know. And
Jeez.
I knew consciously, but I just like couldn't, like, it's just not, I don't have like that bone in my body to be like,
Uh-huh.
um so I just remember that whole experience of, wow, she's scary. And my first match only lasted less than a couple minutes. It was really, really quick. And I had actually visualized, I knew a lot of people said the whole thing about it, how important it is to visualize. And I had learned a move in the class on Tuesday, that one that I was at where I was talking to my coach. My one of my friends, she's a brown belt, and she was teaching me like a Peruvian necktie because she was working on different, which I
Uh-huh.
guess you don't know necessarily the moves. You kind of put your hand, I'm trying to like explain this for like so anybody be able to understand. You kind of put your hand under their arm, and it's like head and arm choke, and then you bring your wrist around and then rock forward as you put your leg in front of their head so it locks it in. Oh, I tried to like shut it. And then you rock back and it's a choke.
Uh-huh.
So I had learned that was the most recent move that I learned. And I decided I was like, I'm gonna try this whole
Oh
visualization thing
my
about.
goodness. Uh-huh.
So it worked. And I actually was visualizing. It kind of psyched me out. I thought I was gonna go against a different girl with blonde hair, by the way. I was like, oh, she seems nice. She has blonde hair. It's not, I don't think it's really about the hair. I think it's more just like she was smiling. She didn't seem as intimidating. So I was literally visualizing like my forearm behind her um braids, but then I realized I wasn't going against her. So then I had to quick switch my visualization. And obviously there's different steps of visualization that
Hmm.
came before the competition itself. But I was like, oh, I'll just like if I get her in turtle, which is a position, I'll
Uh-huh.
pull that. I had some other ideas, but I was like, this is what I'm gonna do because again, it's fresh in my mind. And I ended up getting that. And at first, so I actually got it. She tapped. I thought she tapped. Um, so if she's out there listening to this, if you didn't tap, I'm sorry. I like you maybe you didn't, but I could have swear I saw a tap. The ref didn't stop the match though, which somebody even told me before, don't do it until the ref stops the match. So I let go and she and then like he didn't I was like, wait, what? Like she was just tapping. I'm not gonna let her keep choking. And but then he was like, no, and like we're still going. And then
Wow.
kind of had me keep going. And then I just put her in it again. And then I finished it that way. So I was so relieved after that first match. But then I had my gi one and I was like, shoot, I did not plan for this. Like I didn't know. I was like, hi. I texted my coach. I was like, help, what's a gi takedown I can do? And realized I should have thought a little bit more in advance. But that one I finished with an arm bar. And that was fun.
Oh my goodness. Wow. So thank you for clarifying because I have seen before, like, when I looked at some BJJ schedules, the place that my husband and I are moving to, and it was like nogi and gi, and I'm like nogi, that sounds like a Japanese word. What's nogi mean? And I'm like trying to look it up, and it took me probably a few weeks to realize it was no gi. You don't
Yeah.
wear a gi. So yeah, that was pretty confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. I always thought it was like I remember when I started taking the class, I was like, I didn't even know what a gi was. I was like, is this how you say it? This is
Mhm.
weird. But then I
So
just
do you think you would do it again?
oh yeah, definitely.
Oh,
And I
you
think
would.
that first one getting again, I don't like to say getting it out of the way because that sounds bad. Like it was definitely a good experience. There's just so much pressure on the first one. Now I
Mhm.
feel even more excited about going out there and doing it again. It's just a
Mhm.
matter of when it fits in my schedule. I also would probably invite like people who want to come. Like I think my family was kind of sad that they didn't have the opportunity to come down and watch, but it did
Mhm.
release that pressure. I think I would feel better about being like,
Yeah.
hey, by the way, I'm actually doing this instead of keeping it a secret. Not a
Yeah.
secret, but
You weren't advertising.
I was not, I don't even, I did not tell, like, similar to when I wrote my book, I tried not to go out and tell everybody just because,
Mhm.
again, it adds that pressure.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. So, Christina, we probably ought to start wrapping up because we've been going a while, but this has just been a fantastic conversation. I mean, I just love talking to you, and I'm so excited about some of the things that you're doing. So, before we do wrap up, tell us a little bit about the documentary that you're working on.
Yeah, so we are with the documentary. I'm doing casting as well as being the strategic director and also kind of filling in for a lot of producing. It's a very grassroots film where we're getting a bunch of Gen Z people together, and obviously the people who are working on the film
Hmm.
have expertise and background in the film industry. But really trying to, I guess it's very actually similar to my book in the sense of let's figure out this problem and have it come from the people who are experiencing the problem, not necessarily on an individual sense, but like a
Hmm.
generational sense. And we're really uncovering the root cause of why Gen Z mental health is
Mm.
continually getting worse. And I'd like to say that in the future, it's not going to get worse because we're going to decide to change things as a generation. But what's really causing these high rates of anxiety and depression, and also telling the stories of people who have experienced, mental health struggles. And, we want to showcase the real people who are experiencing it and the real problem, but also provide a way to share the solution. So people know, okay, this is a problem. What can we do about it? So balancing that storytelling component with the optimism, and I don't want to say optimism, like very, maybe you have a word for this, like tactical, tangible, I feel like
strategic things that or positive steps that they can take
yeah, like very
along the way.
practical, like
Yeah.
what can we do about it?
Practical
Um,
application.
exactly. And
Yeah.
recognize the importance of, it all goes back to the basics at the end of the day, right? Move your
Right.
body, connect with people, show empathy, which we've lacked quite a bit with technology, and, you know, nutrition, like all of that. It's the going back to the basics. And, we can, like, at the very least, just showing up for the people in your life when you can, showing up for yourself too, right? Not like over, some people are really great at showing up for the people in their life, but not great at showing up for
For
themselves, and
themselves.
being able to, you know, do both of those things. And I mean, showing up for other people sometimes does, like, that is a really great way to boost your own mental health. But if you're fully neglecting your own, like, again, we could dive deep into this, but just really want to provide that as a resource for people, and also to get people to start to realize it on a very personal level.
So once the documentary is done and it is out for the public viewing, would you be willing to come back on the show and talk about it and tell us about the experience and where people can find it, blah, 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 all of the really good stuff so we could promote that too?
Yeah, I would love to. That'd be great.
Okay, and I know I have all of your links, everything in the show notes, but if you could share with the audience, some of your social media, how they can get a hold of you, where they can follow you, that type of thing. I think it really gives a nice personal touch.
Yeah, so all of my handles are Christina Wenman, or I also have Learning from Your World on Instagram as well.
Mhm.
So definitely follow that there. Learning from Your World is on all the platforms for podcasting. If you're listening to, like, if you normally listen to a platform that it's not on, send me a message, let me know. And if you ever want to chat, let me know. You can send me a message on any of those. Also on LinkedIn with Christina Wenman as well. And my website's down right now, but it might, I mean, when it comes out,
Mhm.
it'll, I mean, I am just kind of working on changing some things. But
Mhm.
yeah, feel free to send me a message. We can chat. And I think that's probably most of it. I mean, my book is out on Amazon, Success for Your Eyes. You can find that on any of those
Mhm.
platforms. So
Mhm. Excellent. And any final pearl of wisdom you want to share with the listeners, whether it be, you know, BJJ or, success or chasing after success or not?
yeah, I think if there was one thing that I was like, oh, I'd really love if people did this, I think everybody has something that they want to try, but they're scared of, or a passion
Mm.
project that they want to pursue. But, it's in the, like, I still remember, like, whenever I heard other people talk about this, like, there's always that thing in your brain. So if there's anything that's in your brain, which I bet you there is, passion project, you want to start jujitsu, you want to start, even if it's like you want to start, you want to reach out to someone, like whatever that thing is in the back of your head, just to, like, do it. And, like, if that seems like too much, think about the steps that you can break it down to, and
Mhm.
do one of those steps, but doing it today, and, like, really getting the momentum for doing it. Because every time, it's kind of like when you go over a grassy field with a tractor.
Uh-huh.
I grew up in the country, so this is how it makes sense to me. Every time you continue to choose that, like, new experience, like going over that new grass, um whatever that looks like for you. I'm kind of being vague because it is a different thing for everybody.
Mhm.
But every time you choose that discomfort, even though you know it's something that's good for you, it becomes a little bit easier, right? The grass
Mhm.
starts to go down and there's a little less resistance. I mean, usually trucks or tractors are pretty strong. So I guess you don't feel the resistance. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but like it just, or a sled. I don't know. Think of an analogy that works in your brain.
Mhm.
But every time you go over that, it becomes easier because you've created a path by doing that one thing. And kind of like what I was talking about before with courage is so subjective because it's reflective of, you know, not the actual thing that you're doing, but fully reflective of your experience in relationship to that thing.
Mhm.
If you've done it before, right? Every time you choose to do something like that, it becomes easier and easier. And that's why when I started doing the weekly courage task, whatever you want to
Mhm.
call it, I guess I could call it whatever because I started doing it. Um, I every like that's why I think that was so powerful because
Mhm.
it created momentum. It made everything else easier. It expanded my comfort zone and I was doing things that I wanted to do without feeling that mental load or
Mhm.
anxiety or worry about it. So
Mhm.
again, whatever's in your brain, break it up, or if you feel like you're ready to do it all now, like just get started on it. Oh my gosh, and if you listen to that and then are like, "Oh, I did it." Please let me know because I love hearing people's stories of like, "Oh, I read this or I heard you say this." And I one time I had someone come up to me and say, "I completely changed my career path because of your book." And they went from like something super like conventionally quote unquote
Uh-huh.
successful, like super lucrative because their parents wanted them
Of course, yeah.
to something the opposite. And I was like, that's awesome, but please don't give me credit for that. So don't do it because I say so, but just
Uh,
use that as kind of like a reflecting piece. But if you do it, I would love to hear the stories
mhm.
of some of those things that people start taking action on.
Mhm. Christina, thank you so much for being here. I absolutely love talking to you. You are just so much fun.
Thanks. I love talking to you too.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. Do connect with Christina. Do check out her podcast. Obviously, she's a great podcast host. I've been on her show, and I am just so excited to follow her journey and see where it takes her because I'm telling you, we can make the world a better place. And when you listen to people like Christina, you hear her story, her enthusiasm, her passion. I really believe that that's going to happen. So just remember, be courageous, do things that scare you a little or a lot. Just make sure it's in a safe environment and connect with me and let me know about it. And I'll send it off to Christina as well because we sure do love empowered people. And
Yeah.
that, yeah,
Oh my gosh,
that
wait, mic drop. Can I do a mic drop?
Oh, go
Okay,
ahead. Yes, 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 yes.
wait, is this gonna mess up the audio?
Oh, heck no, go.
Or should I
Oh,
catch it like underneath?
it's up to you.
So it doesn't or should okay.
No, go ahead.
But then is it as impactful if I drop it? I'm in a library right now. I feel like I should be careful. Okay, ready?
Uh-huh.
Is this gonna damage the mic?
I don't think so.
I'll like catch it with my feet or something maybe. Okay, ready?
Okay. Okay, so there was a mic drop. It obviously didn't hit very hard. And Christina just caught it with her feet. And remember to drop the mic. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.